This presentation was scheduled from last year. Dr. Mark Stout asked me to do a presentation on Laurel when I was executive director over at the Laurel Historical Society, and I had that position for just about 7 years before I came here. And so I wanted just to talk to you about Laurel and get you familiar with the Laurel side of Howard County, and just talk a little bit more about the uniqueness of Laurel. So I will be happy to answer any questions, and as we go along or at the end. And again, feel free to get up and move around if you need that. And if for any reason you can't hear me with the microphone or anything like that, please just let me know. Okay, excellent. So we are going to do a brief historical and geographical overview of Laurel. Keeping in mind that my definition of brief is often different than other people's definition of brief. So if I get too deep into any one topic, just feel free to move me along a little bit. But I'm happy to talk about Laurel. I'm happy to talk about all the different counties where Laurel is. Okay, so this might be a little hard to see, but this is from the 1861, the Martinet map of Prince George's County. And you can see a couple of geographical and historical features on it. Most notably, if I can, there we go. Most notably, that squiggly line is the Patuxent River. So that is one of the reasons why Laurel is in existence. Laurel owes its existence to its prime location in the state of Maryland. It is almost exactly 20 miles to DC and 20 miles to Baltimore. So it's really a halfway house, if you will. And in fact, one of the earliest improvements in the area was a halfway house where people could come and change horses or get a bite to eat or spend the night before going on their way to either DC or Baltimore. But it's also along the Patuxent River, and so that gave rise to a handful of small mills on the river as well. And so as early as 1811, we believe, this the situation that became Laurel had a grist mill on it, and this land was all Snowden property. So I think we're familiar with that name in Howard County. It's no stranger to Laurel as well. So Laurel owes, again, its existence to the Snowden family, whose house was at Montpelier Mansion in South Laurel, and we'll see that in a little bit as well. So it has the river, it got improved, and the mills grew and grew and grew, and Laurel became Prince George's County's only factory town, only industrial town. And that distinction is going to be important because like Howard County was, like this area was, and like most of Prince George's County, the rest of the county was agricultural, even plantation-based. Laurel was not. Laurel was never plantation-based. Its economy came from its industry and from its factories. And then if we go, I'm gonna pop quiz you here. So that was 1861. Laurel was incorporated as a city on April 4th, 1870. And that was really significant because that meant it could have its own mayor and city council, or originally commissioner and president of the commission. And it could have its own police and fire, which is important because Laurel burned significantly for lots of periods of its history. And they could also enact its own laws. So this is the charter for the city of Laurel in 1870. Take a guess, what was the subject of the very first legislation, the very first law that was put on the books? What do you think it was regarding? Yep. Parking. We're not talking about 2025. Any guess what was so important that it had to be the first? No, I don't think it actually was ever a dry city, but it's a very good guess. We're getting on the right track. It was actually there's one more hand, one more guess.
No, I was curious if it was related to what county it was in.
Oh, no, so right at this point in 1870, it was solidly in Prince George's County. I heard it over here. Pigs, yes. Very good. No one ever gets that, so give yourself a pat on the back. Yeah, apparently Laurel had a very big problem with pigs or hogs going to other people's yards. So that was the first way, was to corral the pigs and keep them in your property and out of someone else's. Okay, so we have a much more detailed map now, and this is the 1878, I want to say, Hopkins Atlas. So this, again, is 8 years after incorporation, just over 15 years from the previous map we saw, and look how Laurel has developed. Again, it's diving into its industrial past, or it has 2 active mills at the time, the Laurel Cotton Mill at the far end over here, and then the Avondale Mill, which was another cotton mill, but it was a finer type of cotton for lace and embroidery and things like that. And so then we have all of this land, businesses along Main Street, and then that's the railroad depot. The B&O Railroad came, coming from this area here in Ellicott City down to Laurel in 1835. So that was another reason why Laurel was so significant in terms of its location. It had the post road between Baltimore and DC. It had the train, and then it had the waterway. So all modes of transportation were well covered with Laurel. Yes, sir.
How large a vessel could float on the Patuxent Dam?
Oh, nothing in this area. So the water was just for control of the mills to dam it up. So I'm not sure how far up it was navigable, but it definitely wasn't anywhere near Laurel. They relied on the road and the train transportation, and it's about a mile from the train all the way up to the mills where the Laurel Museum is located. Okay. All right, and so this is what the Laurel Cotton Mill looked like. This is from one of the lithographs in the 1880s, I want to say, and this is a really kind of nice perspective, because if we were doing the perspective of the illustrator, we would be standing in Howard County. So this is one of the geographical boundaries. So Laurel Cotton Mill, Laurel Museum, City of Laurel is all Prince George's County. Right across the Patuxent River is Howard County. Settlers Landing is one of the developments in Howard County. And so you can see the river right there. There's a little trestle bridge over it. That is 9th Street. There was a bridge of some sort from the very beginning in the 1830s all the way up until Hurricane Agnes just took it out, along with a lot of other things in the area, and it was never replaced. And then if you would come up 9th Street, you would come to the building that is now the Laurel Museum, right off the edge there. And then this is a photograph from later in time. This is after the turn of the 20th century, but this is the front view of the Laurel Cotton Mill with some of the workers, the men and women in front, and you can kind of see, bless you, you can kind of see the dam in the background. They dammed up the Patuxent River as early as 1850 to help control the flow of water. The dam was pretty successful in doing that, and the mill itself was pretty successful for all of Laurel's run. They did have to close it down for some periods because the water, there wasn't sufficient water to run the mills, and that was also impacting the laborers, because if the mill couldn't run, you didn't get paid. So there were a lot of considerations for the labor force as well when the mills weren't running. And then again, we have Howard County represented over there on the tree line. And then just real quick, this is a picture of Avondale Mill. So this was the other significant mill in Laurel at the time. Unfortunately, it actually burned in 1990, shortly after it was put on the National Register of Historic Places. So this is no longer part of the historic landscape of Laurel. And so parts of the dam still remain, and the Laurel Museum is really the only publicly accessible aspect of Laurel's industrial past. So that's significant in terms of its interpretation and its accessibility. And this is an early picture, early postcard I should say, of the building that would become the Laurel Museum. So this was one of the mill workers' housing. There were several blocks of mill workers' housing right across 9th Street from the mill, the picture we saw a little while ago. And the postcard gets everything wrong. That is a terrible caption. Every single thing in there is wrong at the time. It was not built in 1802. As I just told you, Laurel just squeaked into existence in 1811, we think. It was not the oldest house in Laurel. It might be pretty close now at this time, but it was not the oldest at the time of the postcard either. And so the traditional workers' housing in Laurel was two up and two down, so there were 4 tenant units. And then over time, they went from 4 to 2, and then the 2 became empty storage. The state of Maryland took it over at some point, and then the city of Laurel bought it, renovated it in the early 1990s, and gave it to the Laurel Historical Society to use for their museum. This was a dream come true. The Laurel Historical Society is actually celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. So it was founded in 1975 as the Laurel Horizon Society, and it was in existence for just about half of its time, about 20 years, until it got a museum.
1875 or 1975?
I'm sorry, 1975, yes. Well, yeah, so we're a little younger. Yeah, 1975, 50th anniversary today. And so this is what the Laurel Museum looks like today. Does it look familiar to anybody? Okay, so how many people have been there before? Excellent. Okay, that's more than I was expecting. So thank you. So you know the area well. So it has been, like I said, renovated for the museum for the use of the Laurel Historical Society. And everything the Laurel Historical Society does is in that one space. So the museum gallery are on the first floor. Second floor is collection space and office space. The attic, which you can't quite see here, is for exhibit and also collection storage. And there is a basement, and I don't have a view of it, I apologize, but it's actually built into the side of the hill. So there is a full basement, which historically was where the basement kitchens were. So there were 4 little kitchens in the basement there for the tenants. Okay, so this kind of brings us to the title of the talk. This is the logo for the It's All Laurel exhibit. It was put up at the Laurel Museum from February of 2023 to about August of 2024. And this was the second to the last exhibit that I worked on when I was there as director. And it's my favorite, so that's why I'm talking about it today. And it's my favorite for a really significant reason. So when me and my husband moved to Laurel for the first time, we lived in Russet, which is Anne Arundel County, kind of East Laurel. And as I came on board and got more involved with the Historical Society and with the residents of Laurel, I was told Russet is not Laurel. And so I was very upset by that. And just to put it into perspective, how many of you have ever shopped at Total Wine & More? That's Russet. So right across the street, 198 is Russet. So just to put it in perspective. So Russet is Laurel. And so that idea was brewing in my mind for quite a few years. And as we came out of COVID and we developed exhibits, this is something that I wanted to pull out of our archives and pull out of our community. And so one of the things we did was we appointed community curators. We asked the community, we asked volunteers, and we had a questionnaire, and we sat down with them for an oral interview, and we asked them, what makes Laurel so special? What makes your neighborhood so special? What is so great about West Laurel? What do you like most about South Laurel? And we kind of compiled all the answers. And the biggest takeaway from that survey was, if you think you're Laurel, you're Laurel. No matter what the map or someone tells you, if you think you're Laurel, you're Laurel. And that can be controversial. There's compiling a lot of information, as you'll see. So by the zip code, Russet is Laurel, but not, and by different political divisions, there's different definitions of what it means to be Laurel politically, what it means in terms of the county designations, what it means in terms of the school districts. So there's a lot of different distinctions and definitions of what is Laurel. And so that's kind of the question we're trying to answer here is, what and where is Laurel? And Laurel, if you don't know, is I think one of two cities in Maryland that's in 4 counties. So we're gonna have a little poll here. How many of you are from Montgomery County? Okay, I didn't think so. That's why I started with that first. even if I had this talk in Laurel, there would be very few hands. So the Montgomery part of Laurel is just a few streets in the very, very western part of West Laurel. So they are Montgomery County. They kind of just get lumped in generally with West Laurel. How many of you are from Anne Arundel County? I was hoping for at least a couple hands. Okay. So Anne Arundel, like I said, that is where Russet is. That is where Maryland City is, which is kind of weird because it's technically Laurel, but not really, because you got to drive from Laurel to Maryland City to Laurel again. So that's Anne Arundel side, is kind of on the eastern part of Laurel. Prince George's County? Oh my gosh, all right, 100%. Okay, thank you for helping me with my demographics today. So Prince George's County, that is where the City of Laurel is. City of Laurel, the museum is solidly in Prince George's County. Most of the greater Laurel area is Prince George's County. But there also is a distinction because you can live in Laurel and Prince George's County and not be part of the City of Laurel. And that is very confusing come election time. So I think I know the answer. How many of you are from Howard County? Okay, so there is part of Laurel, North Laurel, close to Savage, that is in Howard County. So I am going to just kind of go through. There we go. So I'm just going to kind of go through and just pick apart some of the different areas, the different counties of Laurel, and tell you what is special about them. And so this was the introduction panel to the exhibit. It's north, south, east, west. Where is Laurel? We didn't go with north, south, east, west, which Laurel is best, because we didn't want a fight on our hands every time people came in. But I will tell you, people came in very surprised by seeing their neighborhood there. We had one woman in particular come in just adamant that you're not going to have Skaggsville, and I'm super upset by that. And you go around into the other room, and we had Skaggsville on there. So we learned a little bit about the history of Skaggsville and North Laurel in Howard County as well. So this was the question again that we were trying to answer, and it was great because we got community input. It wasn't just us gatekeeping and saying Russet is in Laurel, we're going to focus on the city limits. And honestly, most of our collection at the Laurel Historical Society, not ours, their collection at the Laurel Historical Society, is all focused on the city limits. It's the Old Town area. It's Main Street, Montgomery, Prince George's County. It's where the mill was. It's where the railroad was. And most of the collection was from the residents and from the people focusing on that area. And so one of the things that I wanted to do for this exhibit, but also for my tenure there at Laurel, was to expand the definition of what is Laurel. And traditionally, as we were looking into our institutional archives at Laurel, we found that that had already been established. So it was, Laurel is the greater Laurel area. And it was kind of up to this exhibit to really pull that back around and celebrate all the different areas where Laurel is home, despite all the geographical and the historical differences. So let's explore that in a little bit. Yeah.
What did you find in the records that made it all
Laurel? So I was saying about our collection that most of the Laurel's collection is based on the city of Laurel, the Old Town. Oh, well, yeah, going back into our institutional archives, as the Laurel Historical Society was reviewing its documents for the 50th anniversary, they went all the way back into like the 1970s when they were setting up and establishing their minutes and their charter and their bylaws. We found a document written that had said Laurel really should encompass more than just the city of, the capital C, city of. And so it was this mindset from the very beginning in the 1970s that kind of dropped off the radar a little bit. And a lot of the exhibits over the 20 years that the museum had been opened really focused on just the historic area. And it kind of neglected all of the great geographical and historical history and aspects.
So it's a historical society document.
Yes, correct. Yep. Okay, question.
This is a weird question.
Sure.
Only because I'm not familiar with how these geographical boundaries come
Yeah.
into play. But when that was determined that whatever this area is Laurel, was it already 4 different counties, or were lines from the counties
I think so. So as far as I know, the counties had been established, the borders had already been established. It was Laurel that grew into them. So historically, Laurel started in Prince George's. It was there for decades. The city of Laurel started annexing land to build up their city limits. And then as more and more people came to the area, like I said, going back to the transportation hub, we have a lot of commuters. We had a lot of people coming out from DC who just decided to start living there. And so it kind of grew and expanded. And then with the establishment of Fort Meade, that really kind of grew like the east side of Laurel. So it kind of just spread out organically over, 60, 70 years.
So the city annexed land from the county.
Yes.
So how come it didn't then officially become rural, which is if they annexed the land?
So, yeah, so the city of Laurel is all in Prince George's County. And so the city, over time, annexed parts of land that was officially Prince George's County. So then people would, pay Laurel taxes and be eligible to vote in the elections, be eligible for trash and fire and sewer and things like that.
And so when it when it spread to Howard and Arundel and the other ones, why didn't that area just become part of Prince George's if they annexed it?
Well, because the county lines were already established. So the city was growing, the counties were already established.
So the city annexed it. Okay.
Okay. We'll look at maps and things later, so I think we'll be able to move on with that. But again, you're supposed to keep me on track. So this is a little light to see, but calling your attention to the panel on the left, this was one of the panels for the Old Town area. And this was very indicative of the style and all of the information that we wanted to capture. Like I said, there was so many ways to define Laurel, not only historically, but with the political boundaries, the county boundaries, and everything like that. And so we had all of this tons of information that we wanted to show to the public. And so kind of the style that we decided upon was like an infographic. And so that's why you have a little timeline down at the bottom. You have a very kind of loose map of the area, and then calling out some of the highlights, some of the top developments in the area, some of the significant landmarks, the geographical boundaries, and so it really kind of has this infographic feel to it. And fun fact, the designer that did the exhibit for Laurel did the Freedom Seekers exhibit behind you, so please take a look at that if you have not already seen that on your way out. So this is Old Town Laurel. Like I said before, it is essentially a mile from the train station all the way up to the Laurel Museum, and it encompasses kind of the parallel streets and the numbered streets. So Main Street, Prince George Street, Montgomery streets are really the heart of the Old Town area. And I apologize because this is just a screenshot of Google and you can't really see the map outlines very well. But if you look kind of down here, you can see some darker outlines. That is the boundaries for the city limits of Laurel. So it's not very big. The greater Laurel area is much bigger than the city limits of Laurel. And especially, there's some really weird pockets in there for land that the city has not annexed. For example, right across the street from City Hall, the municipal center in Laurel, that's actually the county. So one side of the street has county trash collection, the other side of the street has city trash collection and things like that. So it can get very confusing, especially, like I said, near election time, because there's two voting wards. There's Ward 1 and Ward 2 in Laurel, and Ward 1 is the historic center of Laurel, and Ward 2 is across town by Route 1 corridor. And then if you are in Russet, if you are in North Laurel, if you are in West Laurel or Montpelier, you cannot vote in the city elections. You have to be within this boundary here. And again, this is a little washed out, but this is from the City of Laurel. This is the historic district. So this is the outline of the survey that's done, and everything within this kind of dark purple outline south of the Patuxent River is the historic district. Again, there's some weird boundaries there, but this means that if you are in the historic district, you need to, comply with some of the regulations for the Historic District Commission, which is not the Historical Society, and just kind of, again, look to, kind of keep that history on track. And so that is the Historic District. And just a couple pictures I threw in there just for fun. So these are two pictures along Main Street. Cordelia's Bakery was very, very popular in like the 1930s all the way up to the 50s. And this is actually one of the most historic blocks in Laurel on Main Street right now. If any of you have been to Olive on Main, one of the favorite restaurants in Laurel, that is where the block is, next to the Laurel Mill Playhouse. And then down here, this is a little washed out. This is an older picture. I think it's 1906 or 1909. You have a lot of young men and boys dressed in white, all lined up. They are getting ready to run to DC. Yes, it was like a marathon essentially from Laurel to DC. And for a portion of the time from 1909 to 1920, it actually was like a trial, like an eligibility run for the United States Olympic team. So that was kind of cool. So if you can imagine running from Laurel all the way to DC, that was part of your time trial. Yes, sir.
Did they run down Route 1?
Yes. Yep. And then just really quick, I just had to throw this in here. This is kind of a fun story and a little fun fact. So the Laurel Historical Society has one of Mamie Eisenhower's dresses in their collection. Again, there's a lot of dresses. There's a lot of her dresses in lots of collections across the country. But Laurel has a special claim because after the First World War, the Eisenhowers were stationed at Fort Meade for a brief period of time. They did not like the conditions at Fort Meade, and so they stayed at a boarding house on Montgomery Street for a period of time. And so that is not the dress that she's wearing in the picture, but it is very indicative of the style and the color that she favored. So I just had to throw that little fun fact in.
I think that Eisenhower was like a football coach at Fort Meade. Is that correct?
I don't know, actually. Does anyone else know? I'm not super into the military history. I just know the fun fact. But yeah, I can look that up, and that would actually be a fun research project. So I apologize for not knowing that. And then before we move into the different county areas of Laurel, we wanted to highlight the Grove. And again, we have some historical and modern day pictures down at the bottom. The Grove was the name of Laurel given to like a 4-block area where African Americans settled after the end of the Civil War. It was named for a grove of oak trees, and that is the area where they settled. In the late 1860s. And their community thrived around St. Mark's United Methodist Church, which is still active today. The community had a sandlot baseball team. It was part of the Prince George's County Negro Leagues. And so that was a very big community and family-focused events for very many years. And then to call your attention again to the left, if you can make it out on that black and white picture, that is the Emancipation Day Parade. So this was taken in 1910. As far as we can tell, that is one of the oldest Emancipation Day parades taking place, not only in Prince George's County, but in the state of Maryland. So it definitely goes back, we can trace it to, I think, 1908 is when we have a newspaper reference. And so they are marching down Main Street in that picture. And so they're still doing the Emancipation Day Parade in the middle picture today. And again, just some other pictures. That is the picture of some of the houses next to St. Mark's Church, photographed in their collection in 1959. And then that is a picture of a pool token. So the site of the Laurel Cotton Mill was demolished and razed in 1929, and then a private swim club purchased the land, installed a swimming pool, and segregated it. So this was on the fringes of that Grove neighborhood, so the African American residents could not even go to the pool that was 1 block away from where they lived. And so after a period a summer of terror by the KKK moving into Laurel and Prince George's County in 1967. The city of Laurel bought the swim club, desegregated it, renovated it, and then made it open and accessible to all residents of Laurel, regardless of skin color. The only thing was that you had to buy a pool token from the City of Laurel, and then you can go swimming in the pool. And it is still a popular recreation site today. It's right across from the Laurel Museum today. Yep.
When that community was established, was that where the African Americans were only allowed to settle in town, or was this just, there's a great idea, you can have a community here?
Right, so it was, they were segregated. Laurel was a segregated city then. It was segregated all the way up into, the 60s and 70s. So that was the area that they were allowed to live there.
Still, is it still predominantly?
It is a lot of kind of like the family, like the traditional families have moved out of the area. They've grown up. Younger generations aren't, associated with the church anymore, so they moved out of the area. There is a growing like Hispanic community coming in from some of the apartment complex and kind of moving into more of the historic area right along 198 there. So it is kind of a story of Laurel in a microcosm in terms of its growing diversity and its historic. So there are some, deep-seated traditions that are never going to go away. And we'll see in a few pictures that there were other African American settlements in the Laurel area, but that one is real close to the museum and to the historic district. Okay, all right, we're going to zip along here. So Russet, I already gave you a preview of where Russet is. Russet is technically East Laurel. So there's a North Laurel, there's a South Laurel, there's a West Laurel, but there's no East Laurel, which is kind of odd. So Russet, Fort Meade, Maryland City, that is technically East Laurel. And so Russet is really interesting. Russet only kind of came into existence. It was not necessarily a planned community, but it was a community that popped up in the early 1990s. And you can kind of see that it's only occupying a couple hundred acres, but there's over 13,000 residents at the time. And then there were other commercial properties involved with it. So that's where the Sam Clubs, the Walmart is today as well. And there's also some really interesting geographical, there we go. Some geographical aspects to it as well. So this is Oxbow Lake. This is the largest naturally occurring freshwater lake in the state of Maryland. So Deep Creek is the biggest. The largest, but it is not natural, it's man-made. So this is a beautiful preserve in the middle of Russet, and there's like walking trails, and it's really big for bird watchers, and you can kind of go into the estuary, and you can see beavers and all kinds of things like that. So there are some historical and geographical trail markers there as well. You don't have to be a resident of Russet, you can just kind of park your car and kind of walk around. It is very, very beautiful. And abutting Russet is the historic community of Bacontown. Bacontown was founded in 1860 by Mariah Bacon. Her picture is right there, taken toward the end of her life. She was manumitted by Asa Dorsey and given 30 acres of land to establish a community. So her, with her daughters and their families, established Bacontown. And it was anchored similarly to the Grove by a Methodist church. This is Mount Zion. It had a St. Jacob's Lodge, which is like a benevolent lodge, and it has a cemetery. And they're very, very proud of the fact that all of those things are owned by the church, by Mount Zion. They actually have control of their own cemetery, which is very important to the community there. Bacontown, like I said, is a historic community, 1860. It did not have electricity and running water, or it has electricity, but didn't have running water and sewer until Russet came in. So Russet came in the 1990s. The county, Anne Arundel County at the time, didn't, it was much more rural than it is now. It's actually really close to Laurel Park. And so Bacontown got running water and sewage when Russet got put in because, again, it abuts their property. So that was, again, very telling in terms of how visible and how accessible the community was in the eyes of the county and the state. Here we go. All right, moving along the compass here, we're going to go briefly to South Laurel and Montpelier. So if you keep going south on 197, you'll get to South Laurel and Montpelier. And this is exciting for two reasons. It is the, I guess the ancestral, not ancestral, but the seat of the Snowden family. And so the Snowdens immigrated from Wales in the late 1600s. They owned 10,000 acres of land. Laurel was part of that, parts of Howard County were parts of it. And so Montpelier Mansion is open to the public as a museum. There's also the Montpelier Art Center, kind of on the same property there. So if you have not been down to that area, it's very, very easy to get to and very beautiful property. And again, you can't see it too well, but that is the mansion in an aerial picture in the 1930s. So you can kind of see spatially, it's really just the mansion. There were other Snowden properties in the area, like Snow Hill and Birmingham Manor, but this was the biggest and the largest from the Snowden family. But Montpelier also gives its name to the planned community, to the Levitt town. So Levitt came in and built a planned community in Montpelier. And these were some of the houses that you could buy. And it's kind of neat because we're starting to see the turnover from the original owners in the 1960s, passing through to their family, and now they're kind of back on the market and they're kind of being renovated and kind of taken over again. And just the objectively cool thing about Montpelier and South Laurel is dinosaurs. I think we can all agree that dinosaurs are the coolest part of any kind of attraction in the area. And so Dinosaur Park is located in South Laurel, and it is a really prolific fossil bed. They have made amazing discoveries. They think they have a new dinosaur. And they found the Maryland state dinosaur in this area. And guess what? You can actually go and dig for dinosaurs. They are open to the public. You can go and dig in the fossil bed. Depending on what you find, they will let you keep it, which is great. It was completely foreign to me with an anthropology and an archaeology background because we have to map everything, we have to keep everything. And when we were digging there at Dinosaur Park, they're like, oh, no, that's just a fossil tree. You can just dig out that. I'm like, it's 100 million years old. Don't you think you want to put it in a bag? They're like, no. A picture's fine. Okay, so on to West Laurel, continuing our journey across the compass. So West Laurel, again, so if you go on 198 towards Burtonsville, you are in the West Laurel area. So West Laurel is kind of unique in Laurel as well. Because if you were in Laurel and you want a historic house, you go into the Old Town area. If you want close access to highways and Dinosaur Park, you go to South Laurel. If you want access to 295 and Total Wine and More, you go to Russet and also Fort Meade. But if you are looking for lands of any type, bigger than like a quarter acre, you head to West Laurel. You head to West Laurel. So if you want land with your house more than a quarter of an acre, then you head over to West Laurel. So West Laurel was started to be developed in the 1970s. It is still part of Prince George's County, except for a little tippy top of Montgomery County. And so it has its own identity. It is the only one of those four kind of cardinal areas with its own community association. So that tells you how, kind of proud of their identity that they are in West Laurel. And here are some historical and geographical and modern day landmarks of West Laurel. So that is the Caleb Carr log cabin. That is actually in Montgomery County. And it is one of the few remaining log cabins in the state of Maryland. And it's right next to, I forgot the name of the church. I think it's Bethel Community Church, right there on Aitchison Lane. That picture, which you can't quite see too well, is one of, again, the earliest houses in West Laurel, starting in the 1960s and 1970s. They had And they had similar, not Levittown, but they had similar plain communities. And again, a really interesting fact is they wanted to name the area of West Laurel, Laurel Grove, because again, there's a lot of trees, there's a lot of property, there's a lot of land there, but they didn't want to confuse it with the historic grove in the Old Town area, so they just named it West Laurel. So, and how many of you have heard of, or know about, or have been to Tubby's Diner? Okay, so, okay, there we go. So Tubby's was an institution in Laurel. It's still kind of there, but it's not quite the same. So Tubby's is famous because it straddles the line between the counties, and it had to choose if it wanted to be in Prince George's County or if it wanted to be in Montgomery County. It was a restaurant, and it was kind of a packaged goods store with like a bar and liquor store. And they went with Prince George's County because they got the best deal on the alcohol and the liquor license from Prince George's County. So the restaurant is not there anymore, but when you kind of passed Tubby's, you knew you were heading either into or out of Prince George's County. And then finally, we're getting closer to home. So we're getting to North Laurel. So we wanted to kind of celebrate North Laurel West and North Laurel East. So in the exhibit, which I don't really have here, we talked about the APL and the Johns Hopkins lab up there. We had some couple like proximity fuses on display at the exhibit at the museum. And then also talk about North Laurel East, which is kind of filling in that space, heading from Howard County into the property that is now the Laurel Park area. And so if you can see it, again, the upper right black and white picture, that is one of the earliest pictures of Laurel Park, starting, we think, in like 1911, before like all the grandstands and all the paddocks and everything like that were built. And then down here is the picture of Rockaway Towers. Does anyone know the story of Rockaway Towers or where it is? Okay, it's technically in Howard County. It's right kind of there where the McDonald's is, right before you get to like the Whiskey Bottom area. Rockaway Towers was kind of this hotel resort. They essentially built it because they wanted a closer place to gamble than Washington, D.C. So instead of going all the way to D.C. to gamble, they put a gambling den in North Laurel. And it went well for a while, and then it supposedly attracted Hollywood stars like Doris Day and Bing Crosby. None of that is verified. But then it kept continually being raided by the police because it got seedier and seedier, and then there was allegations of prostitution rings and drug rings and gambling rings, and so it was finally shut down in 1941, I believe. And so part of it is still there today. It's now an automotive, a trucking center, but it's still there, heading north on Route 1, coming out of the city of Laurel. And then we have Skaggsville. So I wanted to kind of end with some local history as well. So Skaggsville was its own panel as part of the exhibit, mostly because we had a volunteer in Laurel who lived in Skaggsville, so he wanted to make sure that his neighborhood was represented. But I think a lot of people, when they think of Howard County side of Laurel, they think of North Laurel, they think of Savage, they think of Skaggsville. Again, if you think you're Laurel, you're Laurel. We had people in Burtonsville and Fulton identify with being in Laurel. We have people, again, very controversial. We had people in Muirkirk, which is South Laurel, very, very adamant that they are not Laurel, but they are. And so again, that's what I love, is that identity and thinking geographically, thinking historically, thinking politically, thinking with school districts, like where and what is Laurel. And so Laurel is, kind of close, to identifying with Skaggsville, and it has the 20723 is part of the Laurel zip code as well. And so the Skaggsville story was kind of interesting. I don't know if you can see it over here, but one of the side themes was called Mansions and Mobile Homes, because there's quite a few lovely historic properties in the Skaggsville area of Howard County of Laurel, but there's also Pfister's mobile home in that area. as well, and then some cemeteries and land related to part of the Warfield family as well. And so you can see, we're not talking a ton of area, just over 5 square miles, smaller population than the development of Russet by comparison, but very, kind of important, historically as well. And so that is kind of the compass map tour of Laurel. So just, again, shameless plugs for both Laurel and here in Howard County, because both museums need love too, and all the slides are from their exhibit. So the Laurel Museum is open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 12 to 4. It's free admission. Same thing here. This museum and the one next door, the Children's Museum, are open as part of the Howard County Historical Society Saturday and Sunday from 1 to 5, also with free admission. Again, just shameless plugs to support our museum, support Laurel. Go and visit their current exhibit, which I don't have a picture of, is the railroad. So it's focusing on the B&O history, a little bit, from where it started here in Ellicott City, but more focusing on how it went into Laurel and some of the history that came out of it, specifically in Laurel with like the post office and the China and things like that. So, and especially the station in Laurel. So it's definitely worth your visit over to the Laurel Museum to see that. Here are other ways to support both museums as well. And I think that's the end of our slide. So there's the address and the contact information for Laurel. And this is our contact information here at the Howard County Historical Society. So thank you for being part of the Lunch Date with History. Thank you for putting up with me and my microphone. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take a couple now on the microphone. And if not, then you're free to, again, snacks and look at the rest of the galleries. So was there a hand here first? Next month as well. So thank you so much for being here with us today.